Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome back to the deep dive, where we take some of the densest source material out there and really try to distill the key insights for you.
That's right.
Today, we are continuing our big series on the Manual of Patent Examining Procedure, the MPP. We're in Chapter 2500, which is all about maintenance fees.
And this is really where the rubber meets the road for patent owners.
Yeah.
These are the payments you have to make to the USPTO just to keep your patent alive.
To keep it enforceable.
Exactly. If you miss them or if something goes wrong with the payment, the patent can just expire. And that's it for your rights.
That is a huge risk. So today we're looking at a very specific part of this, MPE Section 2532, which deals with a pretty common headache when it sort of is duplicate payments.
It happens more than you'd think.
Right. So our mission today is to figure out what the USPTO does when, say, two different groups, maybe the company's own lawyers and an outside service, both accidentally pay the same fee for the same patent.
And this section lays out a very precise, almost three-tiered approach to handling it. It's not just about giving a refund. It's about accountability and making sure they're following the rules, specifically 37 CFR 1.36 cease.
Okay, so let's start with that first tier, the simplest case. This is the initial filter for what the USPTO calls a non-compliant duplicate payment.
Right, so before they even check their own records, they look at the payment itself. You have to remember, they're processing a massive volume of these things.
So efficiency is key.
Efficiency is absolutely key. And for any maintenance fee to be considered, proper, it needs two specific pieces of information.
And what are those two required identifiers?
It has to have both the patent number and the original application number that corresponds to it.
Wait, why both? I mean, once the patent is granted, isn't the patent number enough? It feels a little redundant.
That's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of data integrity. The patent number is the current ID, sure. But the application number is the thread that connects it back to its entire history, its whole lineage in the system.
Ah, so it's a built-in cross-check.
It's the ultimate cross-check. It drastically reduces the chance of a simple typo or data entry error causing a huge problem down the line. Think of it like a bank needing both your account number and the routing number.
Got it. Okay, so let's go back to our scenario. A duplicate payment comes in, but it's missing that application number. What's the USPTO's move?
The policy is designed to be fast. If it's missing those identifiers, the office just returns the payment immediately. They send it right back to whoever submitted it second.
They don't just hold on to the money.
No, they don't want it. And they don't just send the check back in a blank envelope.
Right.
It comes with a notice. And that notice explicitly says the maintenance fee for that patent has already been paid.
So for you, the person who sent it, the benefit is immediate clarity. You know the job is done, and you get your money back right away instead of it being tied up in some administrative black hole.
Exactly. It's the USPTO saying, we got this handled, here's your money back,
Yeah.
so we're not going to waste time on incomplete paperwork.
Okay, so that's the clean and simple scenario. But let's move on to the more complex one. What happens if that second duplicate payment is fully compliant? It has both numbers, it looks perfect.
This is where the real verification process kicks in. Now, the USPTO has to do some digging. The first thing they do is check if the original fee payment was actually processed correctly in the first place.
So they're checking their own work, essentially.
They have to. They need to be 100% sure that a valid payment is on record for that patent.
All right, so let's take the most common outcome here. The first payment was fine, everything's in order, the patent is safe. What happens to my perfectly good duplicate payment?
In that case, the second payment is returned to the second payer. Simple enough. But here's the key detail from MPEP 2532, and it's all about transparency.
What's that?
The return payment is accompanied by the identification of the original submitter.
Whoa, really? So they tell you who paid it first, they'll name the other law firm or service.
They will. It's all about administrative accountability. Imagine you're a big company using two different payment services, Service A and Service B.
Okay.
If Service B makes a payment and the USPTO returns it saying, sorry, Service A already paid, you now know exactly what happened. It lets you manage your vendors and sort out your own books.
So the USPTO isn't taking sides, they're just providing the facts so you can figure out if it was an internal mistake or a vendor issue.
Precisely. It keeps the records clean and makes sure everyone involved is held accountable.
That's a really important distinction. Okay, now for what I think is the most fascinating part of this whole process, where the duplicate payment system isn't just about refunds, it actually acts as an internal audit.
Yes. This is where it can actually fix a mistake made on the first submission.
This is where things can go really wrong.
Yeah.
Or really right.
This is the administrative nightmare scenario. This is outcome B, where the office's investigation reveals that the first payment was, in fact, not properly processed.
Meaning it didn't comply with the rules.
Right. It failed to meet the requirements of 37 CFR 1.366C or some other provision. And to be clear for everyone listening, that rule governs the specific form of the payment. We're not talking about a bounce check. We're talking about a submission that was administratively faulty.
So technically, the patent was unprotected. But then this second perfect payment shows up.
And that second payment triggers a full-on investigation. The USPTO now has to figure out what went wrong with the first one. They'll even check to see if that first payment was maybe meant for a completely different patent.
A misapplication error.
A classic misapplication error. So that second payment acts like a red flag, telling the system, hey, something is wrong here. You need to fix it.
That's an incredibly powerful function for what is essentially a mistake.
It's the ultimate fail-safe. So based on what they find, the office takes one of two corrective actions, and the goal is always to protect the patent.
So what's the first action? How do they save the patent?
If the first payment was improper, they can just apply the second, compliant payment instead. It seamlessly replaces the faulty one. The patent status is secured by a valid fee, and then they deal with sorting out the mess from the first payment internally.
Let's use that Company A and Company B example from the source material to make it super clear.
Sure. So let's say Company A pays the fee, but they do it improperly. It doesn't meet the rules. Then a little later, Company B sends in a perfectly compliant payment for that same patent.
Right.
The USPTO can choose to use Company B's fee to keep the patent active. They apply that payment, secure the patent, and then they go back and retract the improper funds from Company A.
So Company B's proper payment saves the day. It protects the patent owner from an administrative slip-up no matter whose fault it was.
Exactly. Now, the other option is that the office investigates and decides, for whatever reason, that the second payment isn't the right fix. In that case, they'll just return it to the second submitter.
And do they still identify the first party?
Yes. Even in that case, the return notice will still identify the first party involved, maintaining that critical chain of accountability.
So if we bring this all together for you, the learner, what we're seeing in MPP 2532 is this really structured, three-tiered system. It's designed to resolve confusion and, above all, protect the active status of a patent.
Precisely. First, it filters out the easy stuff, the payments with missing IDs. Second, for the good duplicates, it verifies and provides transparency by naming the original payer.
And third, most critically,
it uses that second payment as a trigger, as a tool, to find and fix an error that might have otherwise killed the patent.
it's just proof that these dry administrative details are actually the unseen infrastructure that protects billions of dollars in innovation.
Absolutely. This whole policy really reinforces trust in the system, and it brings up a provocative thought for you to consider.
Let's hear it.
In a system that's built on such incredibly detailed rules, think about all the unseen historical errors that a process like this one, an MPP 2532, might have prevented over the years. How many crucial inventions, medicines or technologies that we rely on today might have just vanished because of a small clerical error, if not for this framework that caught it?
The idea that a life-saving drug could still exist today because a redundant payment had the right two numbers on it, that's pretty profound. The whole system rests on getting the paperwork right. And on that note, we want to extend a special thank you to Mike Shepard, the creative director who organized this entire audio series.
And please remember, this summary of the MPEP was generated using AI tools, including ChatGPT and NotebookLM. It's for general informational purposes only. It is definitely not legal advice or a substitute for formal instruction.
For any authoritative guidance, please consult the official MPEP, a qualified instructor, or a registered patent practitioner. We'll catch you next time for another deep dive.